Today's project is going to be to remove the cheese grater, nail grater, damage causing speaker covers in the door panels without removing the whole door, and we'll recover them. So the other day I was detailing my car and I noticed like, hey, this thing kind of lifts up and I'm tired of scraping my hand on it. So I went ahead and got some trim panel puller pieces, tools, whatever they are, and started to pry. And I saw the tabs and I was like, heck yes. So just pry it enough that you can see those tabs and work your way around and slowly push down to dislodge them from their spot in the door panel. Just be careful when you do this because it is metal, it does bend, and it will break. It's pretty thin, it's like aluminum. So just be careful as you do that. Once you get it out, bring it inside, remove the felt liner from the inside of it to be able to see what you're doing and not damage it. You're going to lay this cover face down on a piece of paper. I'm using 80-pound bond paper that has some level of rigidity. That works perfectly fine. Any other lightweight cardstock or cardboard that you have should also work. Trace the inside perimeter, and then you're going to go through and mark a 1/2 inch perimeter outside of that. So I just use dashed lines. It's kind of hard because of the rounded edges on those like corners. I don't know what to call them. I guess they're corners. So what you can do is just add 1/2 inch dash marks along the outside perimeter where you can see it, and then go back in and mark each of the tabs. You'll notice there's two different types of tabs. There's the flat tabs that hold the felt liner in place. Mark those. I mark those with an arrow on mine, and then mark the holding tabs that sit in the door panel as well, because you're going to create two different types of cuts in your template or your pattern for those, so that the fabric sits well once you have it all put together. Then I went back through, and on those rounded edges or corners, I added 1/2 inch markings in a couple spots, and then just connected the dots and freehanded the rest of the template. Once you have your template drawn, you can go through and add little semicircles at all of the holding tabs. So the ones that actually sit in the door panel and hold it in place, you add little semicircles. Then you're going to add slits, like just little slits like that one right there, where your flat tabs go. This is going to keep the fabric from bunching or folding on itself and laying weird once you are actually to the point of covering your speaker cover. Next step is to cut out the template. You're going to cut around the outside perimeter first, and then you'll go in with the same, or I used a smaller pair of scissors for those detailed cuts on those crescents or half circle shapes where we're going to have fabric taken out of the bigger piece. So go through, make all your cuts, and then once you have that done, you're ready to start working on your fabric. I'm going to use a faux suede. It mimics the look of the Alcantara that's in the inserts of my seats, and it matches pretty nicely with the rest of the interior. It's relatively inexpensive. It was like $8 or $9 a yard. I ended up buying 3 yards of it. If all you're doing is these two speaker covers, then you're probably only going to need a yard of fabric, but just be mindful if you ever want to cover anything else down the road, that if you go back, even if it's the same store, the same brand, the same color, whatever of fabric, it may look slightly different because there are variations from lot to lot in terms of the dye, the texture, the finish, the overall look of the fabric. So it's better to buy extra fabric, especially at $8 or $9 a yard, and just have it on hand rather than not have it if you were to need it. So just be mindful of that. If you're not used to working with fabric, it's important to know that you're always going to mark your fabric face down. So this template is drawn face down, you're marking your fabric face down. So that's how this works. You want to make sure that your fabric is nice and flat and that you haven't overstretched it or it's not bunched up on itself. So there's a nice natural flat way that the fabric will lay on a flat surface, and that's what you want. Don't stretch it too tight, don't let it bunch up on itself. You can use a number of different things to mark your fabric and trace around your template. I'm actually using a fabric pencil. White colored pencil or other colored pencil seems to work well sometimes. You can also use Sharpie as long as it's not going to bleed through. So you can always test a little spot that is going to be scrap anyway. Now, once you have that traced, you're going to make all of your little marks. Here you can see the slits where the flat tabs are. I'm going through and marking those as well. And rather than trying to cut this template out of this huge piece of fabric, which gets very difficult very quickly, I'm just going to cut a rectangle of fabric and then I'll go back and trim it down to size. In order to get those little half moon crescent shapes cut into the template or into the fabric nicely, It works the best, in my opinion, to just take the fabric and fold it in half at the center of where those are. And then just like you're in like grade school, you just cut a half circle. So it's going to end up being a nice, even semicircle. And you can see I'm going to do that here. So there's that little round semicircle. Fold that fabric at the center of the semicircle and then take my little scissors and just do a little snip. So that's how I do that. Go through, make all your slits, make all your little semicircles, and I'm actually just laying the cover down, face down, and getting an idea for if I have cut this to about the right size. If for some reason you feel like there's not enough fabric, which like in this case, I was like, oh, this is kind of tight, I went ahead and just pre-measured and I like started to faux wrap it, and then I saw, okay, it's going to be okay, because again, you don't want to wrap it too tight and you don't want to wrap it too loose. You don't want too much fabric and you don't want too little fabric. So it's the Goldilocks principle. I'm using E6000 clear multi-purpose industrial strength adhesive. Go ahead and tack down one spot that's not at one of those weird corner edges. Just start with one edge, and like anything else that you do, you're going to want to work on one side and then work on the other side. So rotate or alternate sides. Next step is going to be to look at how those rounded corners are going to fold and how the fabric will lay over them once they're folded. So I went ahead and tried to mock it, and then I said, okay, I need to make two little snips. I'll fold in and tuck the middle section first with some glue and clamp it down, and then I will work again on the opposite side to just keep it alternating. So now I'm going on that side and I'm looking at how do I need to snip this so that it will fold nicely. And then I go in and I add glue and I start to fold and clamp everything down on that side. So one of the important things is that you are working in sections opposite of one another. Again, just keeping it even, keeping the tension even, and not overstretching or understretching the fabric. And that will result in a nice flat finish on the front side and give you the opportunity to not glue the front side, because then you're going to have dimples and other weird marks in your fabric. So that's why we're just using glue on the perimeter and not gluing down the face of the fabric. That also kind of eliminates the potential for sagging or drooping or wrinkling to happen. So that was an important thing to take note of. You can see in several instances here where I'm going through and I'm looking at how does this fold, how does this fit, and then making some small minor cuts to accommodate. So in that specific case right there, I said, okay, this needs to have a little bit more movement in the fabric here, and then I can tack this piece down. And I'm just using an unfolded paper clip to spread the glue and tuck those little edges down. The alternative solution would be to go ahead and pre-wrap or faux wrap a copy of your template before you start laying and gluing fabric. So if you look in this little window that just popped up, I'm showing you basically how to do that. So you take the template, make a photocopy of it on just regular paper, and then here, for the example, I'm using the version of this that I did on the driver's side. Again, this is the passenger side Grille cover, so they're slightly different. So it won't line up perfectly, but you'll get the gist or the idea of what to do. So make a photocopy of your template and then go ahead and lay it down on the table once it's cut out. And then you're going to actually use that template to begin trying to wrap the paper over top of the speaker cover as if it were fabric. So that way you'll get an idea for where you need to make those little slices and where you need to cut extra pieces of fabric out of the fabric. This generally should result in a better, cleaner application, but that's not always necessarily the case. So anyways, just wanted to show you guys how to do that. It's an optional step. I have it listed in the instructions as optional. As you can see in the video that I am focused on here with the passenger side, you don't absolutely have to do it, but it is an option. So as you can see, we are done with the gluing process now on this speaker cover, and I'm removing the clips and I'm just taking a look around the whole perimeter, making sure everything's nice and secure, making sure that the front is laying flat. My edges leave a little bit to be desired, so if that's the case, then you can go back in and make adjustments, add additional glue, reclamp it, let it sit for a while. It's just totally up to your personal preference, but the reality is you're not going to notice those minor, I don't know, inconsistencies or that imperfect fold or edge once you're installing it. So The next step is just going to be to go ahead and install it, and you're going to put the felt liner cover thing back in. Secure that down with the tabs. Again, just be careful with the tabs, they're kind of delicate. But once you get that in, you just go ahead and reinstall it in the car and see how it looks.